Pull up a chair and join us, Sat7 UK, as we bring together voices from across the UK, the Middle East and North Africa for honest, hopeful and thought-provoking conversation. No headlines, no soundbites, just real people, real stories and bold ideas that just might challenge the way we see the world. So, grab your headphones, settle in, it's time to join us around the table. Hello. Welcome to our very first episode of Around the Table. I'm Sophie Griffith and I'm your host, and I'm joined here today by fellow hosts, Martin, Mary and George, and we are so excited to be here launching Sat7 UK's brand new series Around the Table, the podcast where we bring together voices from across the UK, the Middle East and North Africa for honest, thoughtful and thought-provoking, hopeful and thought-provoking, all of the things, conversation. So I think before we dive into the podcast a little bit more, I should start by introducing my fellow hosts, George, Mary, Martin. Say hello.
Hi guys, good to be here.
Good to be here with you too.
Hi, it's so exciting to be here.
So we've got George is in Cyprus, joining us from Cyprus today, and Mary's in London, and Martin and I are here in our brand new studio in Chippenham in Wiltshire. Yes, so exciting. Yeah, I'm really excited to be here. So I think maybe, George, do you want to kick us off by introducing yourself, telling us a little bit about yourself, your background, how you came to be here today?
Sure. So my name is George, as been said, and I'm Egyptian, but I live in Cyprus. And I moved to Cyprus mainly to join Sat7. That was like 22, 23 years ago. I was younger, smarter. In Egypt, I was studying theology myself. I was preparing myself to be a pastor in the Evangelical Presbyterian Church of Egypt. But after I finished my studies, I felt called to do something that is different. I like writing and I like working through publications and stuff like this. So I joined the International Bible Society for a couple of years, where I worked in lots of projects that has to do with the New International Version Bible Studies, introduced to Arab speakers, certain programs and certain translations of the Bible. And that was an exciting time. Then I received a call one day from Sat7. It was still new, not very new, but by the time I joined, we were not yet 24/7, and we were one channel, and lots of things were just building up. We were kicking off by then. So I received that call that to join. I've been interviewed, and what I thought it would be a short phase of my life continued over 20 years now. So Cyprus becoming home, and the international office of Sat7 is like a second family, sometimes first. So,
what's your official title at Sat7 in Cyprus, George?
I am working now as the content consultant, working across our channels, like the Arabic, Farsi, and Turkish, and the kids, working with the leads of the channels so that we can understand better what strategies Sat7 puts, how we can develop content to meet these strategies, what is happening in the outside world of studios and our, like what happens with our viewers, with the region, with the media landscape. So mainly lots of trying to connect in and out, which I like to do.
Yeah, amazing. I think sometimes when we hear these titles, they sound so vague, right? But it's amazing to hear what you're actually doing day to day. And Mary is our church engagement officer here at Sat7 UK. Do you want to tell us a little bit about how you came to be at Sat7, Mary?
I would love to. Hi, everyone. My name is Mary, church engagement officer at Sat7. I've been part of Sat7 for 2 years now. 2 years, so still early days for me. And I honestly love this family. How I came to be with Sat7. Sat7 is actually my first mission organization. Previously, I worked in advertising and production. And for many years in that space, I felt quite unfulfilled, if I'm really honest. Like, I felt like there was always something tugging at my heart to do something with greater purpose, something that would feel more meaningful to me. And so when I felt that leading, I just took some time to pray, and I was researching different organizations that I felt like, okay, what would work, what would connect with me. I hadn't heard of Sat7 before, so it was quite new for me. And when I did hear about it, I decided to do a bit of a deep dive and find out information. Now, I'm quite a culture person. I'm really big on culture, connecting with people. I think it's the London in me. We're quite a diverse city, so it must be me being a London girl. And so when I saw just the depth and the scope of work that Sat7 was doing in the Middle East and North Africa, that really stood out to me. So one, I was curious based on the region that was being served. Obviously the work that was being done. I am really excited about all things film and music and media. So that sparked and piqued my interest. And then the third thing that excited me was the role was church engagement officer. So I don't know if I've ever shared this, but I was born and raised in ministry. My father is a pastor. And so from the age of 6, I've been very, very involved with churches. And church has kind of been my life. People would refer to me as a ministry kid. And so I've never heard of the role church engagement officer before, having never been in missions. And so I thought, I can do this. I know about churches. And that is actually what really piqued my interest. And I applied. I honestly didn't think I would get the role. And I'm so happy and so pleased that I did, because what I've been able to bring in my upbringing, I guess, being raised in the church and getting involved with different teams, is church is family. And so I'm really grateful that my work with the UK churches and the Irish churches, it feels just like I'm connecting with my family. And so I'm really glad that that is what brought me and navigated my path to Sat7. And yeah, it's been a beautiful journey so far.
That's amazing.
I feel like the podcast is already delivering.
Yeah.
I've known Mary for over a year, and I've never heard that. It was amazing.
It's amazing what new insights and lessons we're already learning. That's good.
I was going to say, Martin, you've been with us at Sat7 UK for over 10 years, but I think I'm going to start with children's author and avid coffee brewer. I read your bio the other day and it said, likes to brew coffee outside.
Yes.
Why outside?
Because you're just a little bit more engaged with what's going on around you, with nature. It's the perfect place to have a good cuppa by the side of a river, in a wood.
Fair enough. Whatever floats your boat.
But I do love coffee shops as well.
We call him the coffee connoisseur.
Yeah, but it's better than coffee snob. Mary was saying that
coffee consultant.
A coffee consultant. That's true. Mary was saying that she's a London girl. I'm a London boy, and really grew up in it was the 70s, and the 80s in terms of a real diverse, multicultural London. And I think I grew in love with storytelling then, Sophie, right at that time, with parents who loved telling stories of faith, but also children's stories. And that's where my love of children's literature came from, right in those early days.
Elephants?
My picture books have elephants. But elephants to really show kind of reach and just lots of fun and children playing and children learning, actually. Yeah. So that's where elephants came from. But yes, I do have storybooks around elephants, and particularly about the love of a mum and dad and parents in the lives of children. And actually, that's one of my passions with Sat7 as well. Yeah. And when I started getting involved in Sat7, seeing how we tell stories of faith to children, or how we help children navigate through some of the issues of life, and that's something I know we're going to be exploring in this podcast. Yeah,
absolutely. I feel like obviously we have a whole dedicated channel for kids.
We do.
But kids, as in the channel, is really at the heart of Sat7's mission and ministry, for sure.
And as I was studying. I almost, like you, studied a little bit of archaeology, but actually my grades weren't good enough. So I ended up studying human geography, which I think is actually one of the most important disciplines of our time.
I thought you were going to say better then, and I was going to be really offended.
Well, sorry, I think it is better.
Okay.
because it's all about people and place and how they interact. And I grew up with not just a love of storytelling, but the stories of people who have moved. So the stories of people who've moved because of migration, and then the push-pull factors, if anyone remembers their O-level or GCSE geography. Why do people move? But actually then as I got involved in mission and having worked for many UK and international mission organisations, discovered that actually there's also a factor that's about God's calling in people's lives and how God calls people to move, crossing boundaries, crossing continents in order to share good news or to do something significant with their lives. And that's kind of like through a stick of rock. It's always stayed with me. Why do people move, and how does God kind of interact with them in that process?
Yeah. I just want to ask you something, not a question I've asked you before.
Okay,
but how did you go from that journey from secular work to getting into ministry that you talked about just now?
I think I already had a passion for getting involved in things that were of God. And having had parents, a little bit like Mary, you were talking about parents kind of being involved in mission work. Yeah. My parents were very involved in local church ministry. And actually from that early age, going to different camps, and I just saw the theology of justice, God's heart for caring for people in situations, whether or not actually in the 70s and 80s, South African apartheid or those other issues where I could obviously see there was a dissonance between what God wants for people and what the world is giving them. And through studying human geography and then actually travelling overseas and working for ministries in Europe, I just then naturally kind of developed a real longing to serve God. And that means serving God in the UK, but also internationally. And that's where that led me to.
Yeah. Amazing. And your role is?
Yes, my role, I have the title of Senior Director, which my daughter says is mainly due to the fact that I have more grey hair now than most people in the organisation. But I generally cover and responsible for our work in the UK for communications, for fundraising and public engagement. But a lot of what I do and what I love is to be able to tell and share stories. That's a real privilege.
A good job you work at South 7 then, because it's all about telling stories.
It is all about telling stories. And maybe what we could say is telling a different story, which I think you're going to be moving on with.
We can dive into a little bit about what Sat 7 is and what we do. Perhaps for listeners who haven't heard of Sat 7 before, maybe they've not come across our work much. Really what it is that we're all about. I think it would be good to dive into that a little bit more.
Yeah.
I think just for the purposes of going around the table and introducing ourselves. This is also my first role in ministry work. Yeah. I used to work for universities doing, I was an instructional designer, so making sure everything was academically and pedagogically sound, writing reports and all that kind of stuff, lots of academic content. Which was really interesting. But like Mary, I just felt that something was missing. It's interesting, I really felt that when I got that role, I really felt like that was God's provision. There was like no two ways about that. It was 100% God's provision, I felt. Funny story, because I was living in Bristol, and it was in the lockdown, the COVID-19 lockdown. And I'd previously been working in marketing in London, and then I'd gone back to study my master's, which I did in international development, with a focus on conflict and humanitarianism in the Middle East, actually. And so I'd sort of saved up some money while I was working, and then was living off that while I was studying, because I was also working alongside when I was studying. But then when I saw that role for advertised, I was at my like last month's worth of money, and I was really close to being completely up the stream without a paddle kind of thing. And I just saw the advert, and I was like, I just felt that was, I don't know, I can't honestly can't describe it. I've never experienced anything like it. I just saw it and I was like, this is the role.
That's the role. And but it had nothing to do with archaeology or the Middle East.
No, it was more focused about my experience in higher education and how we provide for students and how we can make their experience the best one possible. And it was really focusing on education and a lot of the transferable skills like writing and speaking to people and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, and it wasn't necessarily anything to do with ministry in that way at all. But yeah, 100% I felt like that was God's provision. But it just came to a time when I thought, this is no longer the right place where I'm supposed to be. And I wasn't entirely sure where that next place that I should be was. But I knew it was there somewhere. And really interesting, when I was doing my thesis for my master's, I was doing some research about diaspora communities from the Middle East and some of the conflicts that had been going on. Specifically, I was looking at the UNHCR Security Council Resolution 1325, I think it is, which is on women. And I saw a video of a little girl who had left Syria. She'd been made a refugee, and she was singing songs of worship. And it was so powerful, and I was using it in my research, and I noticed that it was a organisation, a charity that had released this video, and it was only years later, when I moved to Chippenham, and I would drive up the high street, and I would see that symbol, and I was like, that symbol, that logo is really familiar. Why is that logo so familiar? And then later on, when I realised it was time to kind of move on, I saw the role from Sat7 and I saw that logo and I realised that is why that is so familiar to me, because I'd been using Miriam, the story of the little girl from Syria, singing like worship songs to the interviewer, which was a huge piece of content. It went viral.
It went viral in a way that doesn't often go viral. Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's just so, I think it's so fascinating the way these little things, and obviously to us, sometimes they feel really out of the blue, they feel, completely unconnected. But of course, God has a plan and he's working through all of these little things, even sometimes that we don't necessarily notice or pick up on. Anyway.
And how does that feel now, being able to kind of connect all of those pieces of the jigsaw together from your experience of the Middle East and study, and actually now helping tell those stories?
Yeah, absolutely. This maybe isn't the best word, but gratifying. Like, it's really satisfying to be able to pull in things that you've worked hard on and that you have a real passion for. So my undergrad was in ancient history and archaeology, and I focused on the art of the ancient Near East, which we might call Southwest Asia now. So being able to, I just have such a passion for the cultural heritage and the archaeology of the region. I mean, honestly, I could talk about it for days. And there have been times where I almost have.
But isn't gratitude, I mean, sometimes people have been saying the last few years, it's almost been a slightly overdone word, but it's a really important and meaningful word.
100%.
And I think actually in terms of this podcast and us around the table and for our listeners and viewers, to know that there's a lot that we can be grateful for in this world, even at a time when there's a lot of conflict and a lot of those issues. And actually, we do want this podcast to be one that is full of gratitude for what actually God is doing in our lives and in the lives of many people around the world that's not often told.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's so important as Christians, gratitude and joy, if you like, despite circumstances, is a key part of what we're called for, right? And so it might sound a bit trite to say, oh, I'm really grateful to be working with the areas that I studied in and that I have experience of. But genuinely, it's a real privilege. And it's not an opportunity that we get all of the time. And so, genuinely feel really privileged to be working to be specifically, I feel really privileged to be working on this podcast. Yeah. I'm so excited that we are launching the podcast. Genuinely, I feel like it's been a long time coming, and it's really great to have everyone around.
And I have something to be thankful for. That story that you were talking about, Miriam's story. I was there. Like, I was there when it was filmed, and when we found the girl. She's from Iraq. She's not Syrian. But it's and it was the rise of ISIS, and she was one of these lots of Christian families who fled Nineveh Valley out of ISIS, and they relocated in Kurdistan, Iraq. And that girl and her story, and lots of testimonies that we witnessed when we were there filming, worth like being mentioned. And really, it was difficult time, but great time too.
And George, I'm sure as we talk around the table in the coming months, we will be starting to hear the power of media in many different ways, in terms of some of Sat7's educational programs and some of the music and worship programs, how media can be used for good, how media can get, people talk about earworms, don't they? The things that get into your head, and sometimes that's in a negative way, but actually the power of media to kind of, what we say in Sat7, to kind of bring life-changing moments. And sometimes those moments are joyful, full of gratitude. For Miriam, those were songs that I think kept her going during that really difficult time. And maybe we can share more of that story another time.
We'll have to put the link in the show notes, because it's a really powerful clip. It really is.
Yeah, and it was one of those stories which you don't often get, where many, many years later we're able to catch up with her again and find out that she was able to return. I think it was Karakosh. She was able to return back to her home, and very precious to hear. Yeah,
absolutely. I think it leads us on nicely to maybe talking a little bit more about Sat7 and introducing us if people haven't come across this before. George, since you've been with us the longest, do you want to share your thoughts on what Sat7 is and what we do?
Yeah, I love to think of Sat7 always as like a chance, a window for the Christian communities in the Middle East and North Africa to speak to their neighbors, to connect with them, to witness about the good news of the gospel. I'm from Egypt, as I told you, and Egypt has like the biggest Christian community in the whole Middle East. Half of the whole Christians of the Middle East are located in Egypt. And although we have lots of churches, lots of like Christians cannot be totally ignored. We are like around 10% of the full population. Yet, growing in a country like Egypt, it is hard to connect about the Christian narrative, or what are you doing, with the wider audience, with your neighbors, with your friends, with your colleagues at work or in school and stuff like this. I remember as a child, one of my challenges is that the different narratives that people have about these Christians who are like just going to buildings and closed doors and high walls, and because of lots of political and security tensions that we can explore later, Muslims were not allowed to get into churches except for public events like weddings or funerals, but not in the worship time. And people usually hate what they don't know, not because they are evil, but just they don't know what are these Christians are doing inside churches. So if the situation was hard for me as a person coming from Egypt with lots of churches and lots of Christians, I would imagine it would be impossible for people like in North Africa, for example, where most of the Christians coming from a Muslim background, or people in countries where like Turkey or like Iran, where to be a Turk or to be an Iranian means to be a Muslim. Like they know that there are Christians, but these are the foreigners. So suddenly, like there was a chance that people can, for themselves, look what we are doing as Christians. What are our dreams? What are our moral challenges? Who we are as humans. I remember the first time I heard about Sat7. I was still young, and a neighbor was knocking the door, saying that on television you can see Jesus Christ, and and they were putting in Jesus film, and that neighbor was a Muslim, and he was very excited that like people can learn. And I think this is the success story, like the initiative, why it was very successful, because people knew little about Christians and Christianity, and suddenly they had the chance to know for themselves, like, and make a judgment for themselves. So, like, in short, I like to think of it as a window, and once you open a window, you allow the other to, you can host the other, you can be challenged, you can be vulnerable somehow. So it allows that dynamic of being heard and connecting with people who might be interested to learn about you, and you are allowing them to listen for themselves.
And Georgia, thinking about a window being opened, I just kind of was visualizing that. And when you open a window, you kind of let the light in, don't you?
The light, the wind, the dust, like lots of things. Like you can allow the positive things, and you also like allow. And I like to think of the church this way, because sometimes we think of the church as this alienated, overprotected community where everything is perfect. But we are called to get our hands dirty sometimes, and we are called to carry the shame of others. We are called sometimes for trouble, and opening a window is a call for trouble sometimes, because like you need to rethink of the other. Like you cannot just, in my home, I can be myself. I can wear whatever I want. I can act myself. Once I'm allowing a window, like I'm allowing the other to look at me, I need to consider the other. It's not compromising. It's not limiting my potentials. Actually, I'm maximizing my potentials by considering how my language, how my terms make sense to the other. Like Paul himself, when he speaks about the cross, describing it as a sign of weakness and foolishness. Like he's saying this, but it is like for outsiders, what is this? You are worshiping an execution tool. And once you understand these challenges and try to make sense out of them, you benefit yourself as a believer, because suddenly what is taken for granted, what you are used, what you are becoming familiar with, gets a new meaning, gets a new depth in your life. And when you consider the other, also the gospel makes sense, because like suddenly you try to put it in a context. We are not just preaching a doctrine or a dogma, but something that is incarnated as Jesus Christ himself. Like if God in all of his glory chooses to limit himself in incarnation to communicate with us, how come we as his followers, the church, like called so that the faith makes sense through the incarnation of language, of culture, of lots of things. It's a challenge.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And it speaks to how our society, particularly here in the West, has become very insular and very individualist. And religion is fine, it's tolerated, in some circumstances encouraged, but only in this sense of, well, that's personal to you. That's fine, you do that behind closed doors, don't bring that to me, I won't bother you, you don't bother me. And yet that's not really what we're called to as Christians at all, is it? We're called to share that good news. We're called to get
out in the public space.
Yeah, absolutely. To travel and to cross borders and yeah, absolutely.
And what George has been talking about is actually one aspect of Sat7, I think, that's been going for the past 30 years, has been to educate people, both in the church but actually outside, to kind of bash down some of the misunderstandings or the stereotypes, and that's been a real strong focus. But another key focus has been to, I think you'd agree, George, strengthen the church and the Christians, as you were saying, you in Egypt, but also other Christian communities right across the region, from the west to the east, across different language groups and different variations, to be able to strengthen isolated Christians at those times. And so it's been trying to do a lot of many different things right from the start, nearly 30 years ago. Yeah.
And we should probably say, just in case somebody has really never come across Sat7, that we are producing satellite TV and digital media across 4 channels.
Yes, 25 countries.
25 countries, across the main languages, as well as lots of dialects. So
you're talking about Persian.
Yeah.
And Georgia mentioned Farsi. So you've got the Persian language spoken in Iran, Afghanistan.
Yeah, Dari, Tajik.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then you've got Sat7 Turk, based in Istanbul. You mentioned there's 2 Arabic channels. We actually have 2 studios, one in Beirut and then one in Cairo, where George was originally from, I think, George?
Yep.
And then the Persian studios...
I apologize for that.
No, there's no apology there. But the Persian studios actually are in Cyprus, where George lives. And Sophie, where's the other one?
Yes, we have one here in the UK, can you believe?
Yeah, we do. A little one in London.
Yeah. Which is an amazing studio. I mean, they do so much with such a small space. It's really incredible to visit. Yeah,
that's really
cool.
creative.
As
you mentioned, satellite TV across the region has been one of the main forms of being able to get into people's homes. And there's people and Christians in isolated situations that often have said, we're their church in their living room. But obviously over the last decade, with the rise of digital media and different platforms, Sat7 now has one of the first multi-language Christian video on demand platforms called Sat7 Plus, and millions of people engage with us on YouTube and all the other different types of digital platforms there are. So it's amazing to see the growth and the power of media for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. I feel like we should talk a little bit about the podcast. I think that's why we're here,
That's
right?
why we're here.
So, we've got our brand new series, our brand new podcast, Around the Table.
And we are around the table.
We are indeed around the table. And a virtual table as well. We've got George and Mary on time. I think, do you want me to start off with this one?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. So I think way back when we had the idea, it would have been a long time ago now, but we had the idea of really creating a really special space where we can bring together voices from across the Middle East, across North Africa, across the UK as well, often from diaspora communities or perhaps people who maybe like ourselves work in different ministries or different medias, that kind of thing.
Other authors.
Yeah, absolutely. We have some incredibly exciting guests. I genuinely am thrilled. Like blue sky thinking, who are the most incredible people that I could think to get on the podcast?
And we're going to have them.
And they're coming. Yeah,
wonderful.
I know.
That's
I can't
really
believe it. Clearly, I should have more faith, but I'm delighted. I really am. It's not about headlines. It's not about clickbait. It's really about creating a space where we can dive deeper into some of these conversations, and we can approach some of these hard-hitting topics, some things that maybe don't get spoken about a lot. Yeah. And similarly, we can invite people on the podcast who maybe you don't hear about a lot in the news, in the headlines, but they have a really important voice. They have a really important lived experience, knowledge. Their stories are really valuable, and it's really important to hear what they're up to. And also, it's a real privilege from our perspective to be able to share the stories of what God is doing in the region, because so often we hear that story of that stereotypical story of the conflict and the wars, and even the other day I was in the hairdressers, right?
Okay.
And my hairdresser said, "Oh, what are you working on at work?" And I said, "Oh, we're launching this new podcast." And I said, one of the topics we're going to be diving into is peace building. And she was like, "Oh, well, there's none of that going on in the region, is there?" And I think that's exactly why we need to have that conversation, because there is so much peace building going on. There is so much work around reconciliation, dialogue, building back communities, crossing those bridges. Yeah. And yet we just never really get to hear about it.
We don't. And you said to me, I think in the building of this podcast, well, every one man and his dog has a podcast these days. What's going to be different?
Well, I think part of that, what we've just talked about, is part of what makes it different. But also, excuse me, we're coming to the table and creating a different space. Yeah. We're not just talking about these issues and there it is, off we go, we're done with it. Yeah. We're laying it all out on the table. Not to labour the point, but we're approaching these conversations with a different perspective, to tell a different perspective, to share a different perspective. And it's not about kind of boxing that into a pre-made space that we want to mould, but it's about actually just coming without some of those preconceptions, with open hearts, open minds, and sharing the stories that are actually going on, that are people's lived experiences. And I think also from a faith perspective, coming to that table, coming to those conversations with the love of Jesus that he has for every single person around that table and, across the region, is different. And we can therefore create a different space because we don't come to the table exclusively as ourselves, but we come to the table as followers of Christ, as followers of the Prince of Peace. We have a responsibility to be talking about issues of justice, issues of peace, issues of equality, so many different things. But the things that matter, to people in the region, to people who are going about their daily lives, to people here in the UK as well, they matter to God. And even though they might feel small, or they might feel completely insurmountable, that doesn't mean that we can't approach them. But I would say that even though we're going to be covering some quite meaty, sometimes hard-hitting topics, we are hopefully going to have a laugh or two along the way, and it's all going to be fun and enjoyable, and everyone's going to have a great time.
I would hope so. Yeah. Mary, what are you looking forward to?
Ooh. What am I looking forward to? I think I'm really excited. Like what you were saying, it's the different perspectives that are going to be shared. You said that everybody and their dog has a podcast, which is very, very accurate.
Or a cat.
But, or a cat. Yeah. Or a cat. But we are doing something different. We are gathering around the table, shedding light on very interesting topics. And I think I'm interested in there are areas that even I don't know and I'm not knowledgeable about. And I think with our guests, I'm really excited to just hear alternate perspectives, very thought-provoking conversations, which I'm really excited to hear. I've never been on a podcast before either, so first time for me. And I'm really excited to just dive into the different topics we're going to be talking about around the region. Getting me to see things from different perspectives, because I think working in SAT7 with what we do, the work, the people that we engage with, and even our supporters, I think it's still important to have outside voices coming in and just kind of sharing, what their stories are, what their experiences are, so that it's just not also, one sort of streamlined type of channel. And I think this podcast is a really important space and has to be a safe space as well, which I'm quite excited to experience that alongside all of you. I think the mainstream media, things that are shared, things can either be biased, things can be diluted, things can be covered and not necessarily shared with the truth. And I think this podcast presents us that opportunity to really go deep, take granular insights into what is taking place in the region and beyond. So, yeah.
That's so true. That really resonates with, I think, my hopes and dreams for what goes on around this space, this table, virtually, and in our little studio now in Chippenham. Because I was thinking there's so much diatribe, so much kind of combative. We know that within our parliamentary system. We know that within interviews on particularly on mainstream media, but also all the other podcasts out there. I mean, it's not that there aren't great conversational podcasts, but there's a lot of diatribe. And we want to move from diatribe to dialogue. But I would say even more than dialogue, we want to just be learning and listening. And I hope that there's a space around this table for us to change perspectives. And I was kind of reflecting the other day on, should we all have an opinion about everything? And actually I came to the conclusion that maybe it's not kind of so amazing that actually no. I really shouldn't sometimes have an opinion on something. But what I want to do is to listen to someone's story, like George was just sharing coming from Cairo, someone from Egypt, listening to someone's story, and then me actually asking the question, what's the takeaway from that? What does that say into my personal situation? Coming from London, but now living in Oxfordshire and my community. And I hope that for some of our listeners and viewers, Sophie, that we'll move from diatribe to dialogue, but then actually even deeper into learning, that people will find something new to take away. It's actually going to shape their life my whole life has been shaped and discipled by people from all over the world. I feel I'm a global Christian, not just because I've travelled, but because I've shared and participated in other people's stories. And I've been able to take away and ask the question, oh, what does that mean about justice? Or what does that say about how do I relate to my children or a grandchild now? And I hope that there'll be real theological takeaways, little learning takeaways, little nuggets that people will be able to take away and actually embed in their lives.
Yeah, definitely. I think what you said about kind of pitting people against each other. So often we see these interviews where we have people, this person thinks on this far extreme and this person thinks on the other far extreme. Yeah. And it legitimizes sometimes things that we really shouldn't be legitimizing. And it also creates this real conflict in opinion. Yeah. But actually, it's okay to sit down and have a conversation with somebody, and you might not agree about everything, and that is completely fine.
That's okay.
And creating that space just to have those open-hearted, honest conversations, and to come, and sit down and say, I'm not an expert on all of this, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. And and someone says, well, I'm not an expert on this, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. Yeah. And I think that's also what we're hoping to do here, is not necessarily sit people down and interview them, but just have these really honest, authentic, real conversations and to share that with people, because I think that's really where that's where the true magic happens.
Yeah. and maybe where we can say we kind of can step into someone else's shoes just for a little while as we listen to them.
Absolutely. And Mary, you're talking about some of the exciting topics that we're going to cover. I think I'm honestly thrilled. We've got everything from the geopolitical landscape of the Middle East and North Africa, women's involvement in peace building, youth engagement in civil society, climate change, cultural heritage. There is so much there. Honestly, something for everybody.
And that's just all in the next episode. Maybe not quite.
I just want to to add to this too. The idea of bringing the East and West somehow is important, because sometimes history teaches us beautiful things. We call it nowadays the Middle East, the region I'm very proud to be from, but few hundred years ago, that is very short in history. That was a center for the Christian world, and shaping somehow the whole Western religious and philosophical landscape. When you think of a person like Augustine, and with all of his impact on the church and on the theology coming from North Africa. When you think of Istanbul or Constantinople being the center of the Greek world and Christianity somehow. Alexandria in Egypt. With all of the theological input that it has in shaping the Christianity and the Christian faith. And away from that, I also think that this region being the meeting place between two big religions, Christianity and Islam, that is very rich thing. When you are talking about evangelism, when you are talking about peace building or understanding the other, and with all of its challenges and with all of the questions that raises in mind about whether that is letting my faith go or compromising, how I can be faithful to what I believe in, but at the same time listen to the other and accept the other. I think this is the region where you can ask such questions and learn from how things are happening, especially that nowadays there is no really these regional borders and location. I was visiting London, I think I saw Indian people in more than the British in London, and everywhere you travel now, you feel that people are separated, and because we have to be frank, and this is human thing. I like to be with people that speak my language, act like me and think like me. That is safer and easier option. But we are forced somehow to be connected and to learn from one another. And an idea of a podcast that somehow mingle these two worlds together, or different worlds even, not two together, I think that would be an exciting thing for listeners and for hosts and for guests. lots of things to be shared and to be learned from. So it's an exciting thing, really.
It's a really exciting thing. And George, you kind of start picking up on one of those issues. I mentioned migration as being one of my things that I studied when I was a lot younger than I am now. But I was in London the other day. I went back to near where I grew up. And yes, I was one of the only white people in the cafe that I went to. And yet I could have felt marginalised. I could have felt on the back foot. And there were people of different faiths in the cafe. And I was fascinated by my own reaction to being in an amazing cross-cultural, diverse environment. And I ended up having some amazing conversations with all the people that were sitting around me. But I also know that other people find that difficult. And maybe, Sophie, those are some of the issues we're going to be teasing out as we kind of talk to people over the coming months about what happens actually when you do feel different, or when you feel marginalised or isolated, and actually in terms of people of faith and loving our neighbour, actually what is the right response to that? So be good to touch on those things.
Yeah, I think sometimes we have to be very self-aware, don't we? But also the reality is that wherever we come from, whatever our past experience, whatever our background, we all have a little bit of unconscious bias.
Yeah.
And sometimes we just need to say, we have those, we all have those.
And be honest about it.
Yeah, we don't necessarily know what they are until you're put in a position where you think, oh, I feel uncomfortable. Why do I feel uncomfortable? Yeah. And then we can examine that. And that's part of growth, that's part of development. It's quite exciting, I think.
I think it's quite thrilling.
Yeah.
But we also know that some people move from that feeling uncomfortable to actually then moving backwards and shutting down. And again, I think this Around the Table podcast is a place for us to be able to explore some of that and actually to help change people's perspective about how they would react if they, and when they feel uncomfortable.
Yeah, and I think it's about creating, and I know I've said this before, but about creating a safe space where people can come and share the things that they feel comfortable and uncomfortable about without that fear of harsh judgment, and not necessarily about changing people's opinions, but about laying them all down and saying, if we do change our opinions, if we do change our perspectives, then that's great.
Yeah.
And that's something that we can positively take away from creating these kind of positive and encouraging conversations like we're doing here on the podcast. But it's not necessarily about targeting and trying to change people's minds. It's more about allowing that natural progression and that authentic and honest space that makes people feel safe
and that they can understand and get a greater level of understanding about the other person and their life and their life journey.
And that's something I'm really looking forward to. And I know we've all sort of shared this, but just learning new things and chatting to new people that you might not necessarily come across, and just having new experiences. And on a personal level, almost selfishly, I'm really excited to be doing this because I think this is great. These are conversations that I can't wait to have.
And you get to do it as a job.
Yeah, precisely. Living the dream. That sounds sarcastic. It wasn't. I genuinely meant it.
So good.
Oh dear. Well, I tell you what, I think we should think about some of the things that, well, generally speaking, we like to think about some of the things that our conversations have brought up for us, and something perhaps that's really resonated with us, and something that we would like to take away from the conversation. I don't know if it's necessarily something we want to do today, but perhaps we can start to draw our conversation to a close by thinking about some of the things that we're really specific things that we're really looking forward to diving into, maybe that speak to our personal interests, our background. Personally, I have a real heart and passion for justice, and I'm really looking forward to some of the conversations about sort of reconciliation, peace building and women's involvement in peace building. I learnt this specific fact the other day that peace negotiations are 35% more likely to succeed, according to the UN, if women are involved in the process. Which is statistically significant. And of course, we might know that intellectually or in our hearts or something, but to see that written down in black and white, 35%, and it's so often that women are still excluded from peace-building processes. They're seen as this optional extra, and really, if we have women in front of the delegation, it's going to slow down the peace process. It's going to reduce our ability to negotiate peace terms. But it's so important.
Why is that still a
absolutely.
thing?
I mean, that's
Crazy.
something I'm really looking forward to diving into personally.
That's cool.
Yeah.
What about the other members of our little Around the Table group today? What are they looking forward to?
Really looking for understanding better how my story as a person coming from the Middle East can make sense to somebody from the Western world, because it's as it's a safe place. Like some hard questions will be asked, or some perspectives will be tested, and that would be a learning experience for me, and I think for many who would listen to this. Like how you. Because like we are living in a world where there is nothing, it's not about right and wrong. And don't misunderstand me, like I'm not a believer of that there is morals and there is things that we have to hold dearly. But again, everything is filtered through lots of perspectives and lots of backgrounds and that unconscious bias that Sophia was talking about. So that it is as important as it is to find what is right and what is wrong, what makes sense and what's not. It is very important to try to understand how your narrative makes sense when it's heard by another person, and what can you learn, how you can tell that narrative differently. And also, like, because as I told you, I love history. There are lots of beautiful things that we can learn if we can look at our common grounds, things that we shared between the East and West. I think it's a space and time where we can pass by the easy choice of I tag people like, he's from this region, or that means 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
Because like we are humans, we're not used to deal with all of these different people that we meet every day, like through technology and through media and stuff like this. So we like to give labels and finish the business. Yeah. So that I think this space will be our chance to relax, slow down a bit, and engage our critical mind so that we can understand each other better and enrich by such experience. So,
yes, I love that.
That's brilliant.
Absolutely. I think we so often, it's so easy for us to put things into black and white to help us understand things and make sense of things. Naturally, we do that as humans, but to be aware of that and to approach those areas of grey is something that we're really looking forward to doing. Yeah. How about you, Mary? Is there anything in particular that you're really excited to dive into?
Yeah, I think similarly to you about reconciliation and peace. I think one of the things that I work on within the church engagement team is we have a partnership program where we support isolated believers, and we, educate churches as well about isolated believers. And I want it to go beyond just the term of isolated believers. Like, I'm actually quite keen on understanding what their individual experiences are, but what their thought processes are, because there's so much that there's like a mental and emotional aftermath when believers have been ostracized from families in particular. And so I'm quite interested to learn people's different experiences about that. And just, I think reconciliation in general, what can we do? What can we do to better encourage that? What can we do to, one, gain understanding of that, but what can we do to basically move that conversation along to the point where it's progressive and peace is actually being achieved? It's quite a challenging thing, obviously, in today's world, the pursuit of peace, but I think I'm quite keen on learning what people's different experiences and stories are with that.
That's so important.
I am also looking forward to that.
Same here. And I think maybe thinking about that word peace, we talk about peace with God and peace with each other. And for me, going right back to the beginning of our conversation when you were asking about why do I love telling stories, why do I love writing stories for children, I think one of my passions and hopes for what we'll be talking about is actually asking the question, well, how do we deal with the peace that children and families need when they've been going through so much trauma, whether it be through the trauma of hearing bombs going off, or ongoing conflict, or having to be dislocated from their homes. And going back to that story that we heard right at the beginning from George about Miriam, and just the peace that she found through just songs and hearing songs on TV. I'd love to understand much better, Sophie, how Sat7 and the power of media can be used to bring peace to children and families and the wider region.
And I think that is what makes us well placed to host this conversation, right? Yeah. Is that Sat7 does exactly that, as you just spoke to. It's about giving space, encouraging, and it's just, I think it's really powerful. And I'm really excited. I'm delighted that we're here.
Likewise.
And I really hope that our listeners, our viewers tune in to our upcoming series. Just so much great stuff to dive into, and I really hope that you'll pull up a chair and join us around the table. Thanks for joining us around the table. If you enjoyed today's conversation, make sure to hit follow or subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast, and maybe even leave a quick review. It really helps others to find the podcast. You can keep the conversation going with us on socials at Sat7UK, or find out more at sat7uk.org. Join us next time as we share more real stories and bold ideas around the table.